The key thing that laid out in the gracious speech today, the start of it, said we need to get Brexit done on the 31st of October. And despite the challenges put in the way of that by opposition members in this House, nobody, as far as I can tell, in my constituency is desperate to see more delay and more uncertainty with Brexit. I find Mansfield and Warsaw voted 71% to leave, and I find people all the time who will tell me they are desperate to get the thing done and to get out come what may. I find a handful of people who tell me they don't want to leave and they would like a decision to be made, but I've yet to meet anyone on a doorstep in my constituency who is desperate for 6, 9, 12 more months of delay and non-decision from this place over something that they decided 3 years ago. If we get Brexit done, this Queen's speech lays out the opportunities to make the most of that, to take advantage of the opportunities of being outside the European Union. It looks to legislate on agriculture, on trade, on financial services, on immigration, lots of issues that we can tackle with our own interests at heart outside of the European Union. And that is the right thing for us to do, to leave at the end of this month and then to embark on this brave new era of global Britain, as it's often called, outside of the European Union. But I want to focus on the domestic policies within the Queen's speech today, particularly as the chairman of Blue Collar Conservatives, a group within Parliament here, along with my right honourable friend, the member for Tatton, to celebrate particularly the focus on crime and policing in the Queen's speech today, which is the most regular thing to come across my desk as a Member of Parliament in Mansfield and Warsaw. We have pushed for more officers on the streets. We have pushed for the police covenant, which seeks to protect those officers in the back room with their mental health and behind the scenes. And both of those things are now government policy, which is fantastic. And it's amazing to see those priorities taken from people in my constituency, because that's the way our blue-collar Conservative movement works. We went out and we spoke to people across the Midlands and the north of the country, and we asked them what it was they wanted to see, and those things were at the top of the agenda. Now it is government policy, and we're genuinely driving forward to improve people's safety in our communities, to make sure we feel safe on the streets and in our homes more so than we do now. It's fantastic. I think focusing on sentencing and making sure that sentencing truly fits the crime, particularly in the most serious violent and sexual offences, is hugely important to my constituents, and equally advocating those additional rights and security for victims of crime that came across in today's speech. So I think the priorities within it are absolutely right. From my own personal perspective, but equally important, I think, across the country, I'm also pleased to see that education in schools continues to be at the top of our agenda. Before I came to this place, I wanted to be a teacher, and I failed miserably at that, so I became a politician. Since I've been here, I've talked consistently about the need for more resource for our schools. I think that's the right thing to do. I think, and I'd like to personally thank the Prime Minister and the Education Secretary for the announcement this week that sees that every single school in my constituency will receive a significant rise in funding from September, some as much as an 11% increase in per pupil funding, which will be fantastic. And those with the highest increases tend to be those from the most deprived parts of my constituency too, where it will be most effective and most needed. Not only that, but the £700 million additional funding for special educational needs, where in Mansfield and Warsaw we have a particularly high concentration of those additional challenges on our resources and education that have additionally impacted on school budgets over recent years. That extra breathing space will allow local schools to give those kids from those deprived communities the experiences that they need from our education system to have the capacity and the breathing space to deliver on things like sport and art and school trips and all the things that most of us in this space will probably have taken for granted, but that so many people at schools across the country do not get to experience. I think that's hugely important. Amongst the other bills of note in the Queen's speech, I think fairness in employment practices is another one that will hit home with many of my constituents in an area where retail in particular is a huge proportion of the workforce, but where wages are not high compared with the national average, and that security and that fairness both in work and in pension arrangements from today's Queen's speech will be important. And finally, I wanted to touch on the environment, which is important to us all, and we've all been reminded of the challenge over the last few weeks by the goings-on outside of this place. I, for one, think that we can deliver on improving our environment in a positive way through channeling and investing in modern clean technologies, through changing consumer habits, through looking at the long-term route to delivering on this zero carbon emissions target. I think we can do it without gluing ourselves to vehicles. I think we can do it without telling all of our children that we are doomed. I think there is a positive way forward to deliver on that agenda, and actually it's been pointed out by many people in this debate that we are doing that, and we are in the leading group of countries around the world seeking to improve and safeguard our environment for future generations. Meanwhile, I sat here listening to the Leader of the Opposition's speech, and it's very difficult to say what a Labour government would be for. I hear more about what it would be against. We can probably make some guesses, but I surmise from his speech today, it seems he is for shorter sentences for vicious criminals. He is for uncontrolled immigration. He is for more kids on strike from school. He is for a free ride on electoral fraud. He is for seizing private property, particularly from private schools initially, but the thin end of the wedge, I may point out, that should put fear into the hearts of anybody who owns anything in this country. And for more Brexit delay and for more uncertainty. And I'd hate to point it out to the Honourable Right Honourable Member, the Leader of the Opposition, but none of those things are going to go down particularly well in my constituency and many others like it across the country. So I'm not entirely sure what the Leader of the Opposition is for, but what I do know is that this Parliament is fundamentally broken. We've said this many times over recent months. It hasn't been able to make a decision on this, and with a majority of -43 now, it's unlikely to be able to make a decision on anything. And the atmosphere in this place at times has been absolutely toxic, particularly on the Brexit issue. The reality is that a lot of the things coming forward in the Queen's speech, but the long-term issues that affect our country are things that cannot be done in this environment, things that need long-term collaboration, cross-party working that just has been impossible in this place in recent months. Issues like social care, which actually needs a long-term solution. It needs for us all to get together across the House and agree a plan. We've seen in recent years that issues like that have been weaponised. They have been turned into election issues. A number of members in the House have said government hasn't come forward with any plans on social care. That's not true. We did in the 2017 election. And a policy that said you will keep more of your money through this new form of social care funding was dubbed a dementia tax and shot down and made politically impossible, rather than having a sensible conversation about the pros and cons of that policy and how we might move it forward. Until we get Brexit done, until we can change this atmosphere, until we can have an election and a new Parliament that might be more conducive to those discussions, these things are going to be incredibly difficult. And I hope that's what's going to happen over the next few months. I welcome the positive domestic agenda that includes key priorities like crime, like schools, regional investment that is so important to my constituents in Mansfield and Warsaw, and I live for the day, post-Brexit, when we can get on with delivering it.